Oh, hang out where he normally hangs out? I guess behind ladders. Let's find a ladder to go behind and look for him. We can just knock on his home. Oh yeah, and so like this is a good example of like a difference between Wuthering Waves and this game, right? So like Wuthering Waves has the one main city, and like pretty much everyone in there had a name like that. Like has like a name above their head, and you can interact with them. Most people are like meaningless and stupid, and it doesn't really matter. Like, and the problem is that because it's also like up in a town based like on China, they're all like Chinese names or like the phonetic equivalent of the names, right? Um, and like that's crazy because like a global audience doesn't understand their names. So like from a global audience, their names are going to sound very like weird and foreign, obviously because they are foreign. But also like when you have a shitload of names that like all share like kind of a basic phonetic structure, because like that's just how their language is. Um, when you put fuckloads of people with all their their foreign names around, it just gets confusing. It's too daunting. This is how you should do it, right? Look, can you talk to these people? No. You can talk to this guy. Cool. And like Fareed, Fareed is a kind of is a Middle Easterner name, so it's like, oh cool. Like so you could say, oh, that's a localized name, but look, just the one guy. And then like the shopkeepers, like yeah, like who do they actually give names to? Well, people you have to give names to, like actual shop owners and stuff like that. Sure, you give names to them. Well, did I make a lot of tomatoes? Um, and like that's how you should do it. You shouldn't just like give. You shouldn't like give everybody a name. It's like I don't object to the amount of people they had in their town. Like the town itself seemed a little big and it was really filled, like really full. But I think what makes it feel bad, like for being that full, is because like so many people, like at least maybe half the people had names, like had names over their head. Where it's like, one, you shouldn't do that because like when you have too many people, you get it's kind of like choice fatigue. It's like you don't want to give too many people names, right? You want to give just, and I think this guy's part of a daily quest. You want to give them just a few people, right? Essentially, you want people to interact with your NPCs. You do. You want there to be some value to them. You want there to be, you want the ones that you do give names and you allow to talk to have some sort of story to tell, even if it's not like a huge one, even if it's just a little minor little tidbit. It's just to flesh out and make the world more interesting. But when you make everybody in your town talkable, and everyone all says like meaningless bullshit, like that gets boring. Like, okay, cool, I'll host this. She might explain what this location is. I know this board. Yeah, I can't even talk to that guy, right? So it's like it adds to the lived-in feel of like, cool, look, there's all these people. This town looks populated, right? But it doesn't overwhelm you with a shitload of people to talk to. It's like, no, it gives you enough people to make it feel lived in, and then enough people to talk to make it more interesting, to give you a little bit of insight into the culture, and and that way you're not also inundated with a bunch of foreign names. Like, uh, that guy's gone. And then of course, like oh yeah, those two are gone too. Oh cool, they actually are on a light cycle. Like that. I think I'm not sure. Maybe that's a Middle Eastern name. It's not. Maybe it's still foreign to me, sure. But like, oh yeah, like that's obviously a foreign name too. So they do have all these foreign names and stuff. So it's not like I'm not saying like you shouldn't. I mean, I don't know. Like realistically, they shouldn't. They should kind of keep them like yeah, like Akram, Pariha. Yeah, these are all very foreign names. But like, there's not many of them, right? There's only a few here and there. The fact that you can interact with each one of them is good. But I think the problem is they just had too many names and too many that you interact with. And I guess I'm a little biased too, because like I've played this game, so I've also done all the side quests, done all the daily quests, and so like there's a daily quest. Oh, that guy's gone. There's a daily quest that involved the guy who's here. I think there's a quest that involved her too, and I think so not only do they have less interactable NPCs, but some of the NPCs that are interactable are also part of side quests, right? So whereas in Wuthering Waves, a lot of them, well, not a lot, some of them did have side quests, but the problem is there were like twice as many, 2 to 3 times more interactable NPCs in their one city than here, and that becomes a problem because you just get like player fatigue where you're just like there's just too many people, too many interactable people with too many foreign names. It gets confusing, it gets overwhelming, and then there's going to be like because you're going to have the people you actually interact with, like the actual people with quests, the actual characters, and so while it's good to have like I think the number of people in their city is fine. Like it's a huge city. There's a shitload of people in it. That's great. It feels lived in. But the fact that you just named all of them or like most of them is makes it really confusing. Because I mean, generally this is a cell shaded game. All the people are going to look very similar. Like you're basing them off of relatively similar character models. So there's going to only be so much variety you're going to have. So naming them all is not a good idea because not only are they going to look alike, but now you're giving them all of them a bunch of foreign names, and from a Western audience, like it's going to be hard for us to remember the differences between names. And so now not only are you naming all of them with names that will make it hard for us to distinguish between them just because of how foreign sounding they are. Most people will just be like, oh, this is a foreign sounding name. Not only are the names going to be hard to keep track of, but the NPCs themselves are going to be relatively generic. And I think the variety in their games good. I mean, about as much as Genshin. Old people, young people, various hairstyles. But the problem is that they are still going to be relatively generic because they are just regular NPCs that are supposed to be fleshing in the background of the city, and then you just name them in a way that just makes them so even more generic and harder to memorize, which just makes them feel less important, right? Like you interact with an NPC, like because the problem is that there are going to be people who are going to be like, oh, well, I want to talk to every single one. Maybe some of them have something interesting to say, and so you talk to one of them, right? And then you move on. And then you come across a guy, and you're like, "Shit, that guy looks. Like, did I talk to that guy? Like, he looks kind of familiar. I don't recognize his name. Why? Well, because his name's super fucking foreign. So you just couldn't commit his name to memory when you talked to him the first time. And yeah, that's the same guy, but you just don't remember. And so you talk to him, and you're like, okay, well, I do remember this. It's like, yeah, that sucks because you feel like you wasted your time and it's because you just can't remember his name because there's just too many people to interact with, so you just couldn't realistically remember all their names, and then their names are just even harder to remember because they are foreign, so it's just harder for you to remember them. So like that's the problem, is that there's just too many, and you shouldn't do that. I mean, being too many is fine. Having that many is fine. Don't name them all, for one, especially foreign names. And since it's a global game, there's always going to be foreign games, right? Like foreign names. Even if you gave them like English names, like Bob, Dick, and Harry, right? For like French people, for Spanish people, for Asian people, for other people, they're going to be like, yeah, we don't have Tom, Dicks, and Harrys in our culture either. So there's no winning for that. So the only real way you get around it is just to not name them all. Um, and just have a few that are, name the ones that are involved in quests, but they didn't have and that's the thing, is they didn't have enough quests to justify having that many named people. Um, but name the ones that are involved with quests, because obviously they should have names because you're going to interact with them. Basically, anyone you interact with, you should have names, but you shouldn't make everyone interactable. Um, so yeah, like that was kind of annoying. Where it's just like, yeah, it just felt overwhelming. And then Genshin did it really well in that, I think maybe Honkai did too, I forget. But basically, when you interact with these people, a lot of them, if you go down a certain dialogue path, they'll give you free shit. They'll be like, You talk to them, and if you select like the top option for one of them over and over again, it'll have a little treasure chest icon next to it. Because yes, because you interact with them and said this specific line of dialogue, they give you a little reward at the end, right? Like, oh, here's a food, here's an item, something, a little tidbit. Usually, it's never really worth anything, It's a flower that you can just find on the street. It's a food item. It's sometimes money, sometimes this and that, but like it's something, right? So you feel rewarded for doing it. You're encouraged to do it. So they encourage you to talk to the NPCs by rewarding you for some of their dialogue options. And it's usually one per NPC. If you find one NPC who gives you something, that's it. You've expended that NPC's dialogue. But so they reward you, and there's not that many of them. So it's not overwhelming to give you. It's not overwhelming to give you rewards because there's only so many to do. So you feel like you've accomplished something and you feel like you've completed it. Whereas Wuthering Waves has too many NPCs. None of them are rewarding, and all of them are hard to remember because of just their name. So yeah, I find that to be I find that to be a little annoying, right? It's not like bad, right? It's not like, oh my god, they did this. The game is shit because of it. I just think it's a poor design choice. Like, I wouldn't have done that. It's nice when developers try to go above and beyond and add in more stuff. It's good to add in more stuff, but I think they just kind of went too far in the wrong directions. Like, you should have just stopped at a certain point and then maybe invested that time into something else. Like the story, for God's sake, Jesus Christ! The first few chapters of the story were just absolutely terrible, way too fast paced, and that's generally kind of how the entire thing is. Everything just feels too fast paced. Like the fact that you have so many NPCs that don't really say anything, you're blasting through. It's just encouraging everything to go super fast. It's encouraging you to ignore NPCs. It's encouraging you to ignore stuff like the story. So it's just it's a general just. It feels like they don't care to some degree because they can't make things meaningful. They can't make the NPCs. They haven't made the NPCs meaningful. They haven't really made the quests meaningful. A lot of little choices like that, and that's basically why I've stopped the game. I just can't get motivated. So Chang Li came out. I had some extra currency from playing the game before, so I was like, I'll pop in and pull for her. So I got her. I got her and her weapon because I got ridiculously lucky. Um, and that's it. That's the last time I logged in. I got her and then I logged out. I just can't get motivated to do daily quests because they're just so boring and monotonous, and it doesn't feel like I'm leveling up. Because the way in Genshin, the way you level up, the way you get powerful is you get your levels up, right? Okay, that's normal. And then you get your talents up, and then you get your artifacts. But for that game, because they rely so much on skill, because skill is kind of the main thing, you don't feel super powerful. Because against regular monsters, you just crush them, right? The only time you really ever feel like you actually have to try is against actually tough bosses. But the problem with the game, especially in the early game, I think I'm at a level where my max level is 40. Maybe I got to the point where I can level up to 50. I forget. But with 60 being the max. The problem with 60 the max? Maybe I'm 60 and 80 is the max. I forget what it was. Either way, so the problem comes to the fact that it feels like shit when you have to fight against the level 120 monsters in the overworld. Where they're like, oh, cool, we put these bosses. These are the peak overworld bosses where you can have a challenge and stuff like that. But you know what sucks about those bosses is that one hit pretty much kills you. So one mistake and you're dead. Now I do understand that some of it is because we're so low leveled, but the problem is even at max level they'll still be 40 levels higher than you. And maybe you might be able to take 2 hits at that point, but it's just holy fuck, that sucks dick. And I get it. The whole point is you're supposed to dodge the enemy. You're supposed to read their movements and dodge correctly. And I get that. But it just the problem with games like this is that you're supposed to feel stronger, right? You're building your Genshin characters, and you're supposed to be feeling stronger. And in Genshin, I feel stronger when I level, right? It feels like my attacks are doing more damage. It feels like um, I feel stronger for getting a good artifact set, for getting their talents up. But like everything in Wuthering Waves, like I'm leveling the stuff, I'm getting my talents up, and like my damage is decent, but like sometimes I just feel weak. Like there are times where like especially so with Jinchi, like some of her times like yeah I do her like rotation, and she kills things super quick, and then other times she doesn't, and maybe it's the difference between like oh I crit this time and I didn't that time, but like because they don't show that like because of the camera positioning you don't see her damage numbers sometimes, or like when you kill them sometimes you don't see their damage numbers when you kill them, so it's like it's it's hard to tell how much damage you did and like feel stronger because like it feels some semi-random. And I built her pretty well. I think she has like a 60% crit rate, but like still 60% means 40% you're not going to crit. And she has like these big nukes, and you need those nukes to crit. So, um, so yeah, it just feels like all the little day-to-day stuff just makes me feel like I'm not like actually like leveling up. Like, and I'm able to do them super. Like I'm able to do them pretty easily. Like grinding for the materials to level up, grinding for the materials to increase my talents, my abilities. Um, it doesn't take that long. But one thing I do dislike is the traces. Not traces. The echoes. Grinding for echoes sucks dick. Like I do like the fact that you can go into the overworld and farm them. Like that's a nice touch. But it's really for just the sweaty tryhards who are actually going to do that. Like that. Like actually doing that, like actually farming like the cranes to try to get their stuff is like a huge pain in the ass. Especially because like I farm the sets, right? I actually like spend the resin to farm the sets, and like I just keep getting the wrong elemental damage on my sets. Oh, cool! I got the ice set. Ah, it got me electric damage on it. Oh, cool! I got the electric set finally. Oh, but it has ice damage on it. It's like there's been so many times where I get like so I'm farming like the electric ice thing where I can only get the electric set or the ice set, and I get the others elemental damage percentage on the other one, on the wrong set. So I get the element like, oh cool, I'm farming ice. I'm farming for an ice or electric type. I get ice or electric damage, and it's on the other set. And it's like, what the fuck? And this has happened a fuckload of times, like way too many times. Considering if it is like random, where it's like, oh okay, cool, I got the electric set. Okay, now we're gonna randomly roll for one of the damages. The fact that I get the one damage that's on the other set and never the one that's on its own set is fucking insane. Now I do get other elemental damage too, so I'm just getting fucked in general of not getting the one I want. But it feels like shit, right? Especially because those trace domains suck. They just suck. They're not fun at all because what they do is one, there's a lot of waves, and you don't know how many waves there's going to be because whenever a wave appears, it just says, "Oh, here's how many enemies you have left," and it's like it's always the number of enemies for that wave, and you don't know how many waves there are. Now, obviously, once you've done it a few times, you understand. Oh, okay, there's going to be like 4 waves in this, but it feels like shit. Doing wave combat blows. Don't do that. Like, never have more than 2 waves, especially in something that's grindy. Why? Well, because one, it's annoying. Like it's because the idea is that in wave combat, the next wave only appears once everyone is dead, right? Which is yeah, obviously. But the problem with that is that there can be instances where because you're not able to group up because you didn't group up properly or whatever, you kill three of the 4 enemies, or kill all but one of the enemies, and now you have to go chase after the one enemy, kill it, which just interrupts the flow of combat, and that just makes it less fun. And if there were like better ways to group, then sure, wouldn't be a huge problem. And some like Jin Yang can group pretty well. Jin Shi's not that bad at grouping. She has some grouping ability, some grouping ability, but like most of them don't have a grouping ability. The ability to like suck enemies in, and when the enemies spawn, they spawn all around the zone. So it's really hard to get them grouped up together. especially because some of the enemies are ranged, so they'll stay where they are, and you have to chase after them. So like it's just generally a bad idea from my perspective. Like chasing after enemies is not fun. Range in a close combat action game, ranged enemies in general are not fun in any game, no matter what game it is. Like if you're playing an action combat game, typically melee, you're a melee class. But like I understand if you're gonna like go, open world, sure. Like you have to have variety. Like having a variety of enemies adds more spice. If all enemies were melee, that would suck. But like it depends on the kind of game you are. So like Elden Ring can do it. Why? Well, because there are ranged abilities in Elden Ring. You can have magic. You can have other things that are ranged. Now, I think I think actually magic is the only one though. Is your only ranged ability, which does kind of suck. I guess technically you could summon to do ranged abilities. So I would say Elden Ring at least has that option, but I would say it's also not a great example of it because pretty much 90% of Elden Ring is melee within melee range. Everything's done within melee range. Very, very rarely do like most of the abilities, most of everything is about doing something in melee range. Um, and they just have and just magic's the only thing that can be ranged, but that's it. But like every weapon, there's no weapon that like attacks from a distance. So you don't get like throwing knives, and you can attack with throwing knives or anything like that. Or so like everything's within melee. So that's why in Elden Ring, ranged enemies do suck too. And that, but like to some degree, it doesn't matter as much because you have Torgal, so you can not Torgal. What the fuck's your mount in Elden Ring? Torrent. You have Torrent, so you can hop on that and just dash into the ranged enemies, right? So while ranged enemies do suck and they're annoying, they do give you something to make it easier because you can rush in and kill them, right? But generally, even still in Elden Ring, it sucks. Like ranged enemies suck. No one likes them, and they're just fucking annoying because they're just an extra hassle you have to do to go get them. And so in action combat games in general, like that's just bad. And then like the problem with Wuthering Waves is you have no ranged abilities. Like, and I mean, I guess technically you do. All the gun users are ranged. You could have a gun user, but like the problem with the problem with having like classes like that, where like, oh well, sure you have ranged units, just use your gun user. It's like great, awesome, but like, what if I haven't built them, right? Like this is a game where, especially in the beginning, you can't build everybody. You can only build the characters you're going to use. And sure, maybe you're lucky and you're like, oh, I actually like this character, so I built them, and they're a gun user, so you can swap to them. Great, awesome. But not everyone's going to have built those characters. So like that's the problem. Is you've created enemies which are kind of countered by a few by a particular character type, by certain types of characters, but like there's only a few of them. So you just have a higher likelihood of people not building them. And then maybe like, by end game, sure, you built, like for me in Genshin, I've built pretty much every character. But like whenever I get to a situation where I have to swap my team so that I can do something like a puzzle, it's kind of annoying. Now I get it. Like sometimes I shoot myself in the foot. Like if I have my mono geo team, it's like yeah, no shit, I'm not gonna be able to do any of the elemental puzzles. So I get that, right? Like that's my own fault. But the idea is if I'm going into a zone where I'm like I know I'm gonna have to be doing elemental puzzles, I won't be using my mono geo team. I'll swap to a more of a varied element team. Like when the Sumeru first dropped, I created a team to explore. I created a team with my Dendro Traveler and Yoimiya and I think Kokomi maybe, so that I had a Dendro user, I think an Electro user. I forget who it was. Maybe I forget, but I had Dendro, Pyro, Hydro, and Electro in my team party because those are all the elements that interacted with the puzzles within Sumeru. So I didn't have to swap teams. Like I chose to do that because I knew what was going on. But and you could argue, well, there's these ranged enemies all over the place, so it's just generally good to have a gun user in your party. But then that becomes a little kind of annoying because then you feel required to do so. And then it's not about playing the characters you want to play. It's about playing, two of the characters you want to play, and then this guy because you have to. You feel like you have to. It's kind of like how Amber was kind of like required in for a lot of the puzzles in Mons. I mean, Amber's kind of required for a lot of the puzzles in Mondstadt. Leeway, mostly there actually, because it was like you needed. They had a bunch of those like pyro torches where you had to like light the torches. So you needed a fire user, and some of the times you actually had to light torches from a distance, or it just was more convenient to light torches from a distance. And so having a pyro archer, which they gave you an Amber, so I was like, oh, okay. And then I had the Yoimiya, so I just swapped with her after that. Once I got Yoimiya, but you know, you felt compelled because like there were just so many puzzles that required you to burn vines or light torches that like where you have to swap in Amber every like 10 to 20 minutes. It's like, yeah, you feel compelled, and that feels like shit. It feels annoying to have to swap them. It feels annoying to have to use a character you don't want to use. And like I just had Amber in my party for sometimes where it's like, yeah, there's the 3 characters I like, and then just Amber for when I need her, right? And even though she wasn't built at all. So it's just like, yeah, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when you kind of force players to do what you feel like they should do. Because, you know, they especially in like gacha games, you're supposed to you're trying to make the characters appealing, and people are buying the characters because they like the characters and they want to play those characters. To then handicap them and with saying, well, yeah, you like this character, but like because because you like these 2 characters, that means your third has to be this, so you can solve the puzzles, so you can attack, you know, ranged enemies easier. It's just like, oh, come on, dude, like that's not fun. So generally, I think their approach to some of their elements is not the best. It's not like super bad. Like I think having having a level 120 is too high. Like it's just that they one shot you too much, right? Like it's just the damage they do is too high. I think that's bad. They shouldn't be able to kill you instantly. Like, and especially like, I mean, it's fine to have like them be much higher level than you when you first start. Sure, I mean, having you able to come across a level 90 enemy when you're 20 is interesting, right? Because if you're skilled enough, you can still beat it, and it gives you something to work towards. And then when you get to the 120 enemies, you're like, holy fuck, right? Like, and you're still only like level 30. Well, you're like, holy shit, like this is really fucking strong. I'm not going to be able to fight them. You still could if you're strong enough and like skilled enough to dodge everything, because like you're able to dodge most things, or at least know which mechanics are dodgeable and not, and then just staying away from the ones that are not dodgeable, and you could just whittle them down. Yes, you can 100% do that, but it does get, and like dying in one shot against those enemies when you're super low level, fine, you know, like that makes sense. Like they're super high level and you're super low, but like even when I'm like getting strong, I'm still like dying in like 1 or 2 hits, and this becomes especially frustrating when you're playing characters that kind of are not immune during certain aspects of their fight. Like, so when Yin Lin, for instance, when you're holding her skill down, once her thing's charged up and you're essentially planting your threads in them, she's vulnerable during this like 5-second cutscene while she does this. Like she sits down, and then all the lightning threads appear, and she's vulnerable while that happens. So if you get attacked while she's doing that animation, especially when you're fighting these enemies, like you can almost die. Like I think I'm strong enough where she might be able to survive 2 hits, but like healing in the game isn't amazing, right? Like I have Verena. Verena's great and all, but like like one round of her healing, it doesn't, like swapping her in and doing a few of her attacks will heal you maybe like 25% your health, maybe. If you can get a full combo off, you can get maybe 25% back. But when a single hit does 50%, and that's a rotation in. That's you have to do her intro skill and then get off her melee combo for you to get that 25%. Which means the character you swap out has to have built up their resonance so that you can do her intro skill, which is like, oh, that fucking sucks because that takes time as well. So you're only able to get that 25% every now and then. When every single hit does 50%, the odds of you taking another hit while you're trying to get your resonance up so that you can swap in Verena to get some healing in is very high. and so you'll just never catch up, and that sucks. And they do have items, they do have potions and stuff, and you can use them. It just it uh, it feels like shit to use them because like there's no like Genshin has the lunch bag where you can just use it on the fly. You can essentially button map it, and so you can just use your you can use your food to heal yourself. Whereas it seems like the only time I ever see that thing appear is that when a character dies and you try to swap to them, it says, "Oh well, here's your medicine options." Now, obviously, you can open up the menu at any time and do them, but like it still is distracting of trying to open up the menu while you're in the middle of combat, you know, and you could get hit again. So like that, I mean, obviously you just run away a little bit and then open it, but still, it's like it's so there's a lot of elements where it's just like okay, because like it's one of those things where like they're just like oh well it's a skill issue type thing where it's like oh because this is more skillful like these are objectively bad designs, but because some people can accomplish it, you'll get a lot of people dismissing it. It's very similar to Elden Ring in that regard, in that because people can overcome bad design, people will be like, oh well, yeah, it's if you can't do this, it's a skill issue. It's like it's your fault for, and that's why the game is lauded so well is because people are because they were able to beat it. They can't let anyone say negative things about it because if anyone says a negative thing about the game that they beat, that means they're not as skillful as they're saying, so that their ego doesn't let people say disparaging things about the game because they beat it and they've tied their ego to everyone recognizing how good the game is and how tough the game is as an extension of recognizing their skill. And so yeah, there's just some elements to that which I think would be a little better. And like Jinxi too is like, yeah, I'm using her, and it's like she has to get her melee combo off so that she can do her she can get her floaty state and then get a melee combo off in her floaty state. And it's just you're kind of stuck. And supposedly they said, oh well, you can dodge, you can still dodge and continue with her melee combo. But like I've dodged, and when I try to continue my melee combo, it doesn't continue. It starts all over from the beginning. So her thing is all about do four basic attacks, do her skill, do four basic attacks, do her skill, swap off. But four basic attacks is a lot of actions to have to do when you're fighting an enemy that is constantly moving, constantly doing big, heavy hitting attacks. It's just like it just interrupts the flow of combat, which rightfully it should. Like if it's doing attacks, don't continue. The idea that you should be able to barrel through it, I think, is wrong too. I think for her, it's just like it's just kind of understanding. Yeah, you missed your combo, sucks. Try again. I get that. So I'm not complaining too much about Jin Shi. It is a little annoying that I think that I was told that you're supposed to be able to dodge and continue, but it doesn't seem to be working. So I think that's an actual bug. But like Yin Lin is my biggest example where it's just like the fact that she's vulnerable when that's going off is really, really fucking annoying. Because like it's a huge portion of her damage. It's like she needs to be able to mark the enemies, and the fact that you're just vulnerable while that's going on is tough. And I get it. Like you're supposed to know the enemy's mechanics so that you can do it at a time. Like dodge. Okay, they've stopped. Now they're going to be stopped for 5 seconds. Cool. Now do it. But like the fact that you have to like interrupt your flow of combat just to wait for a moment where you can just do her skill so you can swap her off is like really annoying. Like she's already slow enough as it is with her basic attacks, so it's just like it's it's stuff like that, right? Little tidbits here and there, where it's just like it makes it a little tougher. Like she's fine for like normal shit, but like against like the level 120 bosses in the overworld, that's kind of rough. And I'm actually a little curious too. I think it's bad design in Wuthering Waves, but I'm not 100% sure. But so Changli banner came out, right? Changli has a character quest. Now, in the events tab, it shows her character quest. Oh, dude, this character quest get 2,000 adventure experience and these rewards, right? But they have a timer on that. There's a timer for it. Now, I think that timer is the timer for her banner. I think it's the same time as the time on her banner. So my question is, are they FOMOing the character quest? So I'm tempted just to let it run out, and I'm curious if I lose it forever. Like I want to do a request. Like because I do like her as a character. But generally, I just don't want to play the fucking game. It just feels boring, right? And I did like the 1.1 story, and I still actually even have some side quests in that area. And I typically like. I mean, I did like. I think I 100%ed the region. Well, no, I didn't 100%. I'm pretty close though. Like, I'm like an 80 or 90% because like I need to do the side quest and side quest count. But like, I think I've explored and gotten most of the actual like physical things on it. Like, I got all the bells and most of the treasure chests and shit. So I've gotten all that stuff. So I've done the exploration and stuff, but like, yeah, just getting motivated to play the game is rough. Like, it's the dailies don't feel fun. They end super, like, you can finish them super quick, but that's kind of a problem. Like, Genshin dailies are still fun. Like, I enjoy playing the game. It's a lighthearted, fun game. And I don't mind doing the dailies. Whereas like Wuthering Waves is just like, it feels like a chore, and it's just not fun. So I just don't want to do it. It's just hard for me to get motivated to do something. And I get finished just like super quick, which is, you think, oh, that's good, right? You spent your res and you're done. Like, cool. Like, what's the problem? But it's just like, I don't know. It's just like it just doesn't feel fun doing it. Whereas in Genshin, at least it feels fun. Like, yeah, sure, it's the same thing over and over and over again, right? But like, it just feels more enjoyable and entertaining. And the dailies are easier or are harder to do. Like, the Genshin dailies are super simple. You do those 4 quests, and that's it. 4 quests, you're done. For Honkai Star Rail, doing your normal stuff, spending all your resin, using the synthesizer, like essentially doing very basic things gets your daily fulfills your daily quota really quickly and easily. Like, that's what you need to do. You need to do shit like that. The fact that like Wuthering Waves has a kind of far more annoying things that you need to do. Like, sure, it's do the daily quest. Daily quest gets you a shitload of stuff, and spending a bunch of resin I think gets you a bunch more. But like, there's always some extra shit where it's like spending all your resin and doing the daily quest doesn't max out your dailies. Like, it doesn't get you enough it doesn't get you enough points to fulfill to get your 100, right? Like, I think just spending all your resin and doing your daily quest gets you 80 out of the 100 points you need to get all the rewards for your daily quest. And so you have to find something else to do. And I just don't like that. And some of the stuff is super simple. Like, oh, cook once or use the synthesizer once. It's like, oh, okay. Not a crazy thing to do, but the fact that just naturally playing the game, and if you naturally play the game, it's always like, oh, and also like absorb a certain number of echoes, do this, like, sure, like that will also do it. So if you're actually playing the game, if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm going to go and do quests and stuff, yeah, you'll probably do your dailies, no problem. But the problem is that you're trying to get people to come in and do something, and then you're like making an extra hassle. It's like doing the thing that you're kind of compelling them to do every single day, but then also have that not be enough to fulfill their obligation for the day is annoying. To think that, oh, well, I'll go in, I'll do this thing, and now I have to find something. I have to go through the fucking daily list again to find something I can do to get my 100 points. Like, that's annoying. Just make it easier to obtain. Don't have getting your dailies be a hassle, because this is something you're asking your players to do every single day, and you're rewarding them with it. But don't make it a hassle, because it has to be pure. It has to be pure fun, it's like it has to be really fun to do, which it's not. It's not really fun to do this shit. It feels pretty monotonous and boring. So the way they've designed some of their resin spenders is just not really that fun. Like, grouping enemies is a pain. There's a lot of enemies that are just like super, like, that are just placed in far enough positions where it just makes it hard to kill them all at once. So it ends up having to chase a lot of enemies. A couple of the fact you're supposed to be dodging a bunch of shit. It's like, yeah, just generally it's a little bit of a hassle. So it's generally not super fun to spend your resin. So yeah, it's just like it's just little tidbits here and there, and then the fact that when you've done all that shit, you still have to find something to do to get your daily points up to 100. It's like an extra chore. It's like, shit, like, I don't have enough. Now I have to figure out what I need to do. And even if the extra thing to do is just cook one item, right? But then But like, and it'd be one thing if it was always the same thing, right? Okay. You can just get in the habit of, okay, I spend my resin, I'll go in and cook one food item, done. You could even just be like, I'll cook my food item, then go spend my resin, use my food item to like buff my team for the resin spending. Great. Except food always doesn't always appear. They change what's on the daily roster. Some of the things remain the same, but like the synthesizing, crafting a weapon, weapon crafting, and food rotate. So it's not always going to be craft food. So you can't even get in the rotation for that. And maybe it's on a proper rotation. Like maybe it's food one day, synthesizing the next day, crafting a weapon the next day, and then it rotates like that. So every 3 days, so you have a 1 in 3 chance of having it be cooking. But the fact that it's not guaranteed means you can't make a habit of it, which is like it's just an extra hassle. So it means it forces you to actually check the list every fucking time, and it's a pain in the ass to look at the list too because of how they designed it. So it's just like, yeah, it's just one of these little things. It's just the problem is it's all these little things that just make people not want to come back in. Like the story is not super compelling. It's hard to get immersed in the world because of how they designed way too many NPCs with foreign sounding names that all say nothing. That there's no real reason to talk to them, but then you can still talk to them. Like there's no reward for talking to them. There's no meaning in talking to them. They never say anything interesting, super interesting, and there's a fuckload of them to talk to. Like, why? If they're not going to say anything interesting or reward you for talking to them, then what the fuck's the point of talking to them, right? So, way too many people, not super compelling world. Music isn't amazing. There's some tracks that are pretty cool, but like generally, and like some of the tracks fit the ambiance of the area, but generally they're also pretty like boring, monotonous, droning tracks where it's like, yeah, it fits the ambiance of the area, but the area this is like a post-apocalyptic wasteland, so it's like it's not the best ambiance to fit to. And I get it, right? Genshin is a fantasy world and a happy-go-lucky world, so that having more charming, happy-go-lucky music is fine. It fits this game, and it's almost also more enjoyable to listen to. So it's like, yeah, all these little tiny things that are just like, it just gets hard to get motivated. And then, yeah, so I'm going to check it to see Chang Li's quest. I'm going to wait until Chang Li's banner is over. Then I'm going to log into the game and see if her character quest disappears. If her character quest disappears, I'm never playing the game again. Well, maybe I might come back maybe in a year or two when there's more zones and maybe blast through the zones or something, perhaps. We'll see. But if her character quest disappears, that is really bad design. Because I mean, maybe so. I don't know if the character quest is going to disappear or if just the banner like advertising it disappears and that's it. So the character quest might still be there. Like the second the banner appears, you get the character quest. It's just in your quest list. Like it could just be that. Like that's it. And then if you log in a year from now, that quest will still be there. If that's the case, fine. And But then, if that is the case, I wouldn't put a timer on the banner advertising the character quest. I would just remove the timer because there's no point in having the timer. It's just to have the banner go away. Like if the quest is not going to expire, then just advertise the quest without a timer, and then when Chang Li's banner goes away, just take the banner off. Like, just that's that simple. The fact that you put a banner on it makes me think that the quest itself is timed. And then when Chang Li's banner goes away, her quest will go away. And if that is the case, that is very, very stupid. That is incredibly stupid. Because the reason why people buy characters is because they like the characters, not surprisingly. You want Dea, you want Candace, you'll roll for them and you'll maybe spend money on them, right? So the character quests are basically ways to make you care about the characters more, so you might be more likely to buy them, right? Like it's these character quests are advertising those characters essentially. So you want to make sure that everyone can do these quests, and you want to make sure those quests are available for everyone all the time, because like this is how they're gonna do everything, right? Like this is how they're gonna play the game, and you spend money. So, and there was Jin Yang and Yeah, Jinyan, no, Jinyan was a limited banner. It was the Tiger Boy. Tiger Boy had his quest. I think there's another character quest as well. Or maybe it was Jinyan. Maybe I'm thinking, yeah. The Tiger Boy was like the one you just got flat out in the beginning. And I think Jinyan, because he was the first banner, so he was also there. But hey, so I am curious. But the idea is that, yeah, you want to make sure the quests are there because one, it's content for people to do. So the more content there is for people to do is good. Two, like people might because and you allow them to play as that character. It's great advertisement for them. It's like, oh, I play this character. I actually really like that play style. So the next time they come on banner, I want to get them, right? That's the point. That's the reason. It's advertising the character, advertising their personality, advertising their play style. So maybe they can't buy them now, but they'll keep them in the back of their mind and be like, oh wow, shit, I really like Chun Li's play style. I'm gonna get her the next time she comes on banner, right? Or Jinyan or whatever, right? Um, that's the point. So maybe that's what they've done, but the fact that they put a timer on the character quest like advertisement, the on the character quest itself, they put a timer that matches the character's banner. It's like that makes it seem like the character quest is will expire, and that having character quests expire or only being available while that character's on banner is a really really bad idea. So we'll have to wait. I'll wait until 1.2 comes out and see if Chang Li's character quest disappears. If it does, my interest in the game is will greatly, greatly diminish because like this kind of FOMO I really don't like. Like you're already encouraged to play the game every single day just for like the daily rewards you get so that you accrue enough. Like, it's like Genshin still. Like it's like Genshin 2 where it's like the primo gems you get every single day allow you to buy the character. Oh, maybe you're not buying this character, but like you accrue and save and save and save, and then you're like, cool, a character I really want comes out. But you only can be free to play in a game like Genshin or in a game like Wuthering Waves if you're logging in every single day to get those free resources, get those free premium currency that you get for doing dailies. That's the only way you can do it. Be free to play. If you don't log in for a year and you come back, you're not going to have any currency, and you only have whatever events that are currently on offer, and will not nearly be enough to get any characters. So it's like, so yeah. So we'll see. But generally, it's just like, yeah, like exploring doesn't feel as fun as Genshin. The story isn't as good as Genshin. The music isn't as good as Genshin. The combat is more involved than Genshin, more annoying than Genshin, just simply because like you're kind of required to dodge a lot more. Um, no, not really. Like, in the overworld, sure, you can heal through it. You can just power through, just kill them, take a few hits, heal through it. Fine, yeah, no worries. But like, but it's also more annoying to use buffs and food and medicine in combat than Genshin. Like, there's just a lot of the things I care about, like the feel of exploration, the feel of uh, combat, uh, the story, the music, all those things are just worse than Genshin. So it's like I might as well just play Genshin. And it's not like Genshin is like falling off or anything. So it's just like I just enjoy playing Genshin more. And like Genshin feels like they have more content too. Like there's this whole summer event. This is fucking insane. That's all the shit that all the content like you can do for this event. Whereas like, what did 1.0 have? Basically nothing. It had a racing event that was super quick to solve. Like it had the character quest for the characters, but like Genshin has that anyway for their characters regardless. Um, what other events did they? Oh yeah, they had the like that roguelike version of the game, which is like it's okay, but the problem is it's like, oh, to get all the rewards for the game, you have to play certain characters. Where it's like, oh, you need to beat the game with this character. Oh, you need to beat the game getting this summon this echo to max level, which requires like only certain characters can use, and to get them to max level, you have to do it at a certain difficulty, so you can get all the buffs you need to do that. So it's like it's forcing you to play characters you're maybe not familiar with or maybe don't have built, so you having to use their generic, you got their trial character, but like if you don't have them built, sometimes like so if you don't have them built, maybe it's because you don't like them. But because you don't have them built, you can't do like a lower level difficulty with your that character because they're not built at all. You have to find one where they're available in the trial as a trial character, which means that sometimes you're doing it at a higher difficulty than you'd like to, just so you could get a trial character to use for a character you're not familiar with because obviously you haven't built them, and are now forced to do this roguelike mode, and it's like that's not great. I don't think it's great. Like it's fine. It's a fine mode. It's a fine mode if the game was a year old, and so pretty much you've given people time to have built their characters, have built their main characters, have built side characters. Like there's not so many characters where they're just like you couldn't build them all, but like the fact that it takes you like a few months to get to max level. Um, like I don't even know if like maybe I think maybe the whales could get to max level by this point. Maybe I forget. Um, so maybe they can. So like yeah. So but the game's been out for like 2 months. So it's like 2 months if you're whaling, maybe 3 months free to play to be able to get the max level. And so it's like all the resources are spent to get your one or two teams to max level, and then maybe start investing in uh, other characters. And then there's also the fact that you might be farming echoes as well for your main team as well to get better echoes. So you're spending your resin on that. But regardless, let's say after 3 months you might start building other characters. And so maybe after like 6 to 9 months, you might have all your characters, all the characters that are in the game reasonably built. And that's when it would be fine to bring in this combat event. Like to have this kind of combat event. And like it's fine. It's a good mode because it's a roguelike, because they give you trial characters. Um, and the level cap was lower in the very first iteration, so you didn't they weren't expecting to be super built. Um, you could still do it, but I did see that the next event they increased the level cap, so it's like okay, they're assuming you're a higher level now, which makes sense because like the game's been out longer. But it's like the fact that like there are rewards that you can't get really easily, like the fact that you have to be certain characters. It's like you can't just play. It's not like okay, you can get all the major rewards easily enough. Like it's not super hard to get the major rewards, but it's a little bit of a hassle. It's not. It's kind of. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it either. Right? I didn't like it a lot. Like there were some interesting moments, but there are also some like moments where I tried to get the rewards for leveling up one character, and because I'm just not familiar with their playstyle, she ended up dying, and I'm just like, fuck. It feels frustrating to die when you don't know what the fuck you're doing because you just never play this character, and the combat is just convoluted enough where you just don't understand shit, right? Like Genshin is easy. You have your basic attacks, you have your skill, you have your burst, and like most of the characters just revolve around doing it, hitting those buttons, hitting your burst button once, hitting your skill button once, you know, and then just spamming basic attacks in between. And there are some characters obviously that have more variation, and they try to make it more complex. Like Nilo's skill, you have to hit 3 times or 3 or 4 times, and you can press you can. There's like different ways to do it with normal attacks to increase your hydro infusion or something, and then and the other one to get a little hydro circle around her, stuff like that. So there are characters that have a little more nuance to their playstyle, but it's still relatively simple to understand once you get it. Like even so, Arlecchino is kind of a weird one, right? Too. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like she's a lot, but like at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. It's like you apply her skill to get a mark on the enemy, and when you do your charge attack, you absorb the mark and get a bond of life equivalent. And if you avoid doing your charge attack for 5 seconds, you'll get more bond of life. So perfect for using the skill swapping off, and then come back and then do your charge attack, and then now you're pyro infused, and every single normal attack will be pyro infused and consume your bond of life, and then you can do your burst, which will consume the remainder of your bond of life and heal based on that bond of life absorbed and your attack, and reset your skill cooldown. Relatively simple, right? Like, sure, there's a lot of text inner dialogue, it's a lot of text in her talents, but you eventually get it. Like, and it's pretty simple. Whereas, like, Jin Shi is like, oh yeah, if you do, I mean, and you could say, oh, it's relatively simple. Do her basic attack 4 times, do her skill, do her basic attack 4 times. I think you just press her skill. Yeah, you don't have to hold it, and then swap off. And then when you come back on, when you intro skill her, she's already in floaty state, so basic attack, and then do her skill again. Yeah, okay, sure. It's relatively simple, but like, but like, the problem is like that's still kind of complex because you still have to like understand. You have to, first of all, you have to figure it out. Like, I mean, you don't know anything. You have to figure that out. That's how her rotation is supposed to go, which is kind of confusing. And the fact that like all characters have that level of like intricacy to their attacks is annoying. There is no simple like. There are some. It's like Xingqiu, you just pop on, do his skill, do his burst, get him off. That's it. Two button, two button rotation, two button rotation for Xingqiu. If you have his sacrificial sword, it's skill, burst, skill again, swap. Like 3 buttons and you're out. So it's just simpler. And like Arlecchino is just an example of like one of the more complicated things, but a lot of them are also pretty simple. So it's like it makes combat more accessible, more understandable, more enjoyable. And the fact that there's like 4 characters too. You have more characters that just gives you more variety, whereas this game has the Wuthering Waves just 3. So it's like, eh. Obviously, there's different design choices. They're different. They're trying for different things. Wuthering Waves definitely is more skill based and definitely is more intricate. So it should be more intricate. So I'm saying, so trying to dumb it down would not be a good idea because that would be ruining the identity that Wuthering Waves has. I do understand that, but it just makes it still. It does make it more confusing. It does make it harder to get into, and you have to be kind of more into that type of thing. It's like Path of Exile to a degree, right? Is that Path of Exile is really going to only going to attract a certain audience because they have to be willing to commit the amount of time into Path of Exile to like learn all its mechanics, and you're just not going to get everyone. Like, not the average player is not going to like Path of Exile. No, they have a specific demographic they're trying to attract, and that specific demographic really likes the game, but only that specific demographic. Pretty much no one else. If you're not that specific demographic, you're very unlikely to like the game. And Wuthering Waves is not as sweaty as Path of Exile. Is a little more accepting, but it's still generally it's the kind of thing where it's like you kind of have to be into this type of shit. Right? And I'm just not really into that type of shit. I'm not really into like I don't get an ego boner for thinking myself skilled in video games. It's like I can do skilled things in video games, but like I play video games for the most part to relax. I play them for the story, and if I have to be skilled to beat the game to see the story, then I'll just do it. But like it's not something I'm looking for. It's something I'll suffer through. But and I'm not the type of person to be like, oh, this has a hard difficulty, I'll do hard. Like, no, fuck that. Like I don't care. Like I don't find any value in overly challenging myself to play a game. Like, I'm doing it for the story. There's no need for me to make it harder to accomplish that. Like, at all. Like, I don't find value in that. Like, there are definitely people who like that. Who are like, oh, because it's challenging and overcoming that challenge is a rush of adrenaline. Yeah, sure, I get that too, right? I get it. I feel satisfied when I beat a challenging boss. But like, it's a transient thing. Yeah, sure, I feel a little happy, great. But like, I'm also not completely stupid, and I also understand that yes, this moment of happiness is not worth like an hour of grinding, right? Like you get these people, and I mean, Elden Ring is one of the ones where they really people. It's Souls-like in general, where they get so ego driven, and they're just like it's all about Jesus fucking Christ. It's like, oh yeah, but it's all the challenge, and like, oh, I beat this really big boss. It's great, awesome. So you beat that big boss. You beat Melania. Great, good job for you. You beat Melania. You feel really good, right? You feel awesome, right? Okay. So you beat Melania, but you took 8 hours to do it. Like that moment of elation you get for beating them, for me, is not worth 8 hours of my time, right? Like if that boss was half as difficult and you could finish it in 1 hour, let's just say, like, because it's the kind of thing where it's like even if it's super challenging, even if if it's half as difficult and because it's half as difficult, you beat it in an hour or less, right? Will you still feel happy when you beat the boss? Yes. A half as difficult Melania, you'll still feel happy and for beating it because you still spend an hour. Even if you beat it in like 2 or 3 pulls, you'll still feel happy, like, yeah, cool, like that was pretty tough, cool, I beat it, right? Now, sure, it's not going to be the, roaring, screaming, yeah, I did it, woohoo, after 8 hours of trying, sure, because because essentially the reason why you feel happy, the reason why the elation is more, is because you yourself realize how much time you wasted on that. You have already quantified the value of the time spent doing it, and are like, yes, now that I've beaten it, you're now thinking in your mind, oh, that time was well spent. Realistically, it wasn't. It wasn't. You've made that. It's a sunk cost fallacy, essentially, where it's like, yes, you've made that time worth it because you've beaten it. And if you give up, then that time was wasted. It's similar to the sunk cost fallacy, where it's like, yeah, you've now made it worth it by doing it, but really, did you make it worth it? Like, no, you could have spent that 8 hours playing. I mean, there are some games you can beat in 8 hours and had far more fun. Those 8 hours, you could have played another game and had a lot of fun playing those games, like that game, right? Like, you could have played 8 hours of Super Mario RPG, right? Not a really hard game, but still an enjoyable game. And the amount of fun you would have had in those 8 hours playing Super Mario RPG would easily beat the moment of joy you had from beating her at the end, right? It's just how it is. It's just, but because you're just like, oh, well, because sure, the peak of joy you get from beating it is going to be higher than any one moment in Super Mario RPG. But you're also, thinking, okay, well, sure. Let's say beating Millennia is a 10 out of 10 of enjoyment, right? And Super Mario RPG, is just like a 2 out of 10 on the enjoyment scale, right? Now, I think it's higher, but let's just keep it low, right? Just show how different the scale between the two is, right? But for Millennia, for 8 hours, it's a 0 out of 10. For 8 hours, you're running at a 0 out of 10 enjoyment. You're just ball busting, like going, holy fuck, this is hard and challenging, blah blah blah. And then you get that 10 out of 10 peak at the very end. Whereas Super Mario RPG, is a 2 out of 10 every single minute for that 8 hours, right? Hell, let's even bring it down to like 1 out of 10, right? Let's say it's a 1 out of 10 for every single one of every single minute of those 8 hours. Now, I would say you should just say, hey, um, I would say it's just like, okay, well then add up, like, so a 1 out of 10. So add 1, plus every single minute in those 8 hours. So it's essentially 1 times every single minute, for 8 hours. How much enjoyment was that? So 4,800 fun, right? I think it's 4,800 minutes in 8 hours. So Super Mario RPG was 4,800 amount of fun. Those are the minutes of fun you had. And Millennia was 10 for that final elation of 10 at the end, right? For that 1 minute, you had a 10 out of 10. But Super Mario RPG is a 4,800 because you had a 1 out of 10 every single minute for those 8 hours, right? So it's one of those things. It's just these people just only focus on that rush of victory, completely ignoring the fact that, yeah, you got that rush of victory at the cost of your life. You spent huge chunks of your life for that one rush. And I'm like, well, I don't, like, I value my time more than that. And sure, I've had my rushes. Like, when I beat Valdez and Arsenal for the first time, holy fuck, my heart was fucking racing. It was fucking crazy. That was a super rush. Not as much in Delirium Savage. It was pretty cool though. I did enjoy it. But yeah, like, but generally it's just like, and then for those, I'm actually trying to accomplish something. Like, I was going for the mount for both of them, right? And I have my mount, and I enjoy my mount, and I get fun from my mount, right? I still run around on my Demiosma. I still zip around on my Cerberus, right? Riding those mounts brings me joy, right? But like in games like Elden Ring, any Souls-like game, any game where it's like, oh, it's a challenging fight. Once you've beaten it, you're done. Like that's it. You derive no enjoyment from that victory after the fact. Now you could argue that sure, if it's a boss that's particularly challenging that drops something, like a weapon or like ashes or magic or something like that, you could say, well, using it every time you use it afterwards, like all the fun you get from using that weapon, that weapon skill, blah blah blah, all that stuff. The fun you get from using those things will count. And I'll say, yeah, sure, that's true. But it's just you're not going to be using that weapon skill all the time. I mean, you could argue that I don't use my Cerberus mount or Demiosma all the time, but like it still brings me joy to use it. Um, and it's not even like every person's going to beat Millennia and then instantly use their weapon skill or their shit. Like not everyone does that. But basically, and so yeah, I'm just like the people who like those types of games are like, oh, I'm in it for the rush. You beat a challenging thing, cool. I feel really satisfied, and I'm like, yeah. But for me, it's always about the time invested. How much time did I spend doing this? And I'm not going to spend 100 hours to beat Elden Ring, like ever. Like it's not worth it. The story is absolute trash. Like it is absolutely dog shit. The fact that people think that the lore is like super deep, it's like the fact that people even say the lore is deep is crazy because like the lore is not deep. The lore is very shallow. It covers a wide breadth, but it is not deep at all. And I find it crazy that people say that. I mean, I think people are just saying that as a saying instead of actually meaning it because like because I'm actually talking about depth. Because like if you actually think about it, like what is the total number? Like what are the total number of lines describing any one character? What's the maximum number of lines of lore, like sentences, maximum of sentences describing any one particular character, right? Like most have barely any. In fact, like I think probably the most would probably be like Radagon or America, perhaps, because she's a focal point and is involved in a lot of stuff. But like, that's it. Like, how many sentences are to describe Melania? How many sentences describe Michaela? How many sentences describe Radon? How many sentences of lore describe any one of these characters? Right? Like, it's just like a handful. 5 to 10 maybe max. Like for any one of them, it's just like, what part of that is deep? Whereas these are sentences. It's like it's you barely have a paragraph to describe any one of your main fucking characters, and you're saying, yeah, the lore is super deep. It's like, no, it's not. It covers it covers a wide area, but it doesn't go deep. It's a very shallow thing. And you might be like, what? It's like, that's crazy. It's like, no. It's why? It's because one, it tells its lore in post-it notes. So every little bit of lore you get is just like 1 or 2 sentences, and then it just spreads bits of lore throughout the world. So it's like 1 or 2 sentences 1,000 times. And you might be like, oh, well, that's 1,000, like that's 1,000 little bits of lore. It's like, yeah, but this is 1,000 little bits of lore that are trying to cover like hundreds of years of history. This lore is covering the entire story from the inception of this world to now in 1,000 post-it notes. Like, you're getting a history book. This lore is a history book, and you're only getting like 10% of it in fragmented sentences that you're having to you have to find and then glue into the correct spot. Because it's not like you're finding the lore sequentially. No, you're getting it in random things. It's like, cool. Okay, well, I'll gather all my 1,000 bits of lore, and now I have to figure out where it goes in the story, where it goes chronologically, and it's basically a history book that doesn't, because it says it says it like a history book. Like that's why when Elden Ring was nominated for best narrative, I was like, holy fuck, that's stupid. Like it is. You could say its lore is deep. Well, you could say its lore is deep, but it's not. You could say its lore is interesting, which I would say, yeah, sure, its lore is interesting. I would give you that. Sure, its lore is interesting, but its narrative is dog shit. Like it doesn't have a narrative. There is no narrative. Like what kind of narrative doesn't have a main character? And you might be like, well, but you're the main character. Yeah, great. Yeah, okay. What do we know? What do we know about the main character in Elden Ring? That we're tarnished. That's it. Like that's literally it. We know literally nothing else. And I get it. Oh, well, you're supposed to fill in the details and shit. And actually, technically, each depending on the character you pick, they do give you a backstory of that. But like, it's such a generic backstory. It doesn't tell you anything about your character specifically. And like, okay, so here's one thing I find weird. It's one, the whole opening sequence was, oh, we're tarnished. Why are we tarnished? Well, because we lost the Erd Tree's blessing. Okay, makes sense, right? That's what tarnished is, losing the Erd Tree's blessing. But the start of Elden Ring is us like that little golden spark. That's getting the Erd Tree's blessing back. That's being resurrected by the Erd Tree. So wouldn't we be not tarnished at that point if the Erd Tree has already recognized us? But let's say, okay, maybe not, right? Maybe the Erd Tree just resurrected us but didn't give us its blessing back. Okay, so we'd still be tarnished. One, why does literally everyone recognize us at a glance that we're tarnished, right? Obviously, it's for rather than having the... It's like why everyone in Genshin says Tabibito or Traveler all the time is because, well, rather they can't get the voice actors to voice your actual name, so they just call you this. So that's why they do it. But it's also it's like, okay, well, I'm wearing armor. Like, you shouldn't even know this stuff. You're fucking blind, but you instantly recognize I'm tarnished. Like, it's crazy, right? Also, shouldn't we be not tarnished? Because, like, weren't we resurrected by the Erd Tree? Shouldn't we have the Erd Tree's blessing? That makes no sense. And, okay, that's beside the point, right? Next, okay, we died. We lost the Erd Tree blessing at some point. We don't know why or how that happened. And we were dead. Erd Tree resurrected us. And now we're trying to become the Elden Lord. Why? Why are we trying to become the Elden Lord? We were just resurrected. Like, we lost the Erd Tree's blessing. Why the fuck are we trying to help the Erd Tree out, right? The Erd Tree fucked us over, and then we get resurrected by it, and we're like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to help out the Erd Tree. It's like, what? Why? Why the fuck are we doing this? Like, why are we trying to become the Elden Lord? It makes no sense. So why are we trying to become the Elden Lord? That's a weird thing. We're just told that we need to do this, but why? Like, why are we trying to? Bigger question is, why the fuck do we know about it, right? Like, we were resurrected, and then we appear, and we have to fight one of Godrick's little abominations, and then Torrent and Melina find us, and like poke us, and we're back, and then she finds us again, like, and then we're going in and finds us again, and it's like, oh yeah, you're become the Elden Lord. Like, why? Like, why do we even know this before? Like, what were we doing before that? Why were we even trying in the first place? And then why are we trying to become the Elden Lord? Like, the fact that like everyone's like, why is anyone trying to become the Elden Lord? Like, the Elden Lord is what the fuck is the point of the Elden Lord? Like, Elden Lord has no power. It's Marika who has all the power. Marika was the one who is the actual god. Elden Lord is just the consort of the god. Like, what special powers does being the Elden Lord grant you? It seems like the Elden Lord does jack shit, right? Like Godfrey, the only thing Godfrey did was just fight her wars for her. As a general. Like, did he need to be an Elden Lord to do that? No. Like, maybe he was more powerful. Like, maybe by being her consort, he was granted extra additional power. But like, it was never explicitly said that. We don't know what powers being the Elden Lord gives you, because it seems like most of the powers are actually held by the person who is actually the god. It'd be Marika. So like, that's what's so like stupid about it. It's like, everyone wants to become Elden Lord, but Elden Lord isn't the source of power. It's the ring holder, essentially, the ring creator. It's Marika who actually has the power. And I guess in the absence of Marika in her fragmented form, sure, maybe all that power goes to you. But again, something that's not ever said, you know? It's never said that, oh, because America doesn't exist, now all of her power is now the Elden Lord's power. It's like, no, it's never said that because we don't know what her power was. We don't know what the Elden Lord's power was, right? We have no frame of reference for either thing. So, and which of course makes it even less compelling of why everyone wants to become the Elden Lord when it seems like you're just the Elden Cuck, where you're just like not able to do anything. It's like you're just the consort. It's like, yeah, who like doesn't do anything. And then the fact that no matter like, every single ending is essentially meaningless. And I hate Ronnie. Like Ronnie's ending is such bullshit. So essentially Ronnie caused the entire thing because she's a piece of shit. Because she's like, oh, I don't want to be an Empyrean. I don't want to take over for America. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just kill my brother. Because like that because okay, like let's just do that. And like let's say okay, so Ronnie would be the next Empyrean, next would take over America, and maybe the brother she killed, I forget his name, Goldilocks, something or other, the Golden. Maybe that was good. That was like the person destined to be her consort, and so that's why she killed him specifically because she was like, "Oh, cool, yeah, now I'm my consort." But then, like the fact that she used the blade, right, and in doing so, wiped out his soul and destroyed her body. But like, what? Why the fuck did that happen? Like, that makes no fucking sense. Why were you even there then? Like, if you knew that that was going to happen, then why the fuck did you use the dagger? Couldn't you just send any one of your grunts to do it? Like, why did you have to do that? Like, because like the whole point was, oh, it killed one Empyrean. It killed his soul and your body collectively equals one Empyrean. And it's like, well, then why didn't you just have a non-Empyrean do it to completely wipe him out? Because the fact that his body was festering beneath the Erdtree was what caused a bunch of the fucking problems, right? So if she just didn't do the shit, the world would have been a much better place. The world is shit because of her. She made the world a worse place simply because she just didn't have the balls to say fuck off and leave. Like, she could have just fucking left. She didn't have to go there. She didn't have to stay. Like, no. She wanted to fuck over the world. And then she was like, cool, now that I've taken over the Erdtree, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. It's like, oh, great, so you're just a complete piece of shit, right? So it's just like, yeah. So I don't like her. And that's the only ending. Well, I guess that ending and the Frenzied Flame ending are the actual endings where it feels like it actually mattered, like where your choices actually mattered to some degree. But like all the other ones didn't matter. Like, okay, cool, it's which rune did you implant in America determines like the ending, but they all end in the same way of you sitting on the throne and the world becoming slightly different depending on which rune you use. But again, no understanding of what that actually means. Like, okay, so I guess in one of the endings everyone becomes vampires, and one of the endings the world's full of pestilence, and one of the endings it's just relatively normal. Like, okay, but what does any of it mean, right? Like everyone was in this undead state. Like, is the world fixed? Like, is death back in the world now? Like, is there a normal reincarnation life cycle? Like, are people no longer undead monstrosities roaming the world? Like, none of the endings, just like, you don't understand what any of those endings mean. Even Ronnie's ending, you don't know what it means. It's like, oh, cool, we're on a different path now. Go shuttling through the stars. It's like, yeah, we fix the world? Is the world still like is is her brother's festering corpse still corrupting the world, creating the undead monstrosities? That's still going on. Like, did that fix anything? Like, the Frenzied Flame ending is the only one where you think, okay, I guess everything's fixed, right? Because like people were able to live forever or in this cycle of reincarnation because the Erdtree. So with the Erdtree destroyed, I guess the world would be more like our world, where it's like, yeah, death. People are like death. There is no undeath anymore. People are just. So you kind of have a better understanding of what's going on. But then, of course, we have Milena like going after and hunting us down, which is like, why? Why are you doing this? Like, yeah, I got that you're like, oh, well, you can't follow us down our path of destruction, sure. But then the second we do this, then you start to hunt us down. Like, why the fuck did you even let us get to that point in the first place then? Right? Why didn't you tell us, no, don't do this is bad? Like, you let it happen. And now you're just like, oh, okay, well, rather than stick with you to stop you from doing this, I'm just going to let you go and then hunt you down to the death when you actually succeed at what you're doing. It's like, why? Why did you even let this happen? And now, like, you were the one who stood by and did nothing. Like, so why the fuck is it our fault for doing something, right? Anyway, that's my rant on that done. Story is stupid. Story is bad. Story is needlessly cryptic, and that's fine. Like, it allows, it allows. Like, and people are like, oh, but like, look, there's these hour-long lore videos. It's like, yeah, you want to know why they're hour-long? It's because it's because they take these little post-it notes they found on bits and pieces of armor and gear and various things, and they fill it in with their headcanon. And that's why it's so popular. That's why people think the Elden Ring lore is so deep. It's because most of the lore videos are like 10% sentences from the lore and 90% people making up a story to fill in the gaps. It's a story that is so riddled with gaps that people have created theories, and those theories, and people hear those theories, and then they say, oh, wow, it's so deep. It's like, no, it's not deep. It's because this guy made up most of what he said. He created a fiction using the few pieces of information we have. And we're like, okay, well, here's what I think happened. I think this meant this, and this meant this, and this is how they all tied together, and this is what they were all thinking and feeling and all this shit. They're the ones who are actually bringing in a narrative to Elden Ring. Elden Ring itself has no narrative. Its narrative is dog shit. You don't know the motivations for anybody except for Godric. Godric's a piece of shit. He's a shallow little piece of shit. Like, Melania, why did Melania do what she did? Why were Melania and Radahn trying to become Elden Lord? Why did they leave the capital? When America broke the ring, why the fuck did they all leave and then have to come back to become Elden Lord? Like, why didn't they just take the ring, take the runes just then and there? Like, why do they all have runes, right? All of them had parts of the greater rune. Like, if they all had this shit, why didn't any of them try to become Elden Lord right when the ring was sundered, right when they were all in, right when they were all in the capital, right? Like, why didn't they do that? No, for some reason, she broke the ring, they all got parts of the greater rune, and they all fucked off. And then decided much later to come in. Like, Radahn was like, oh, okay, I've amassed my forces, I'm going to go march on the capital. And then somehow Melania, who was even further away from the capital than he was, managed to catch up to him and stop him for reasons unknown. It's like, okay, well, what? Like, why are you stopping him, right? Oh, because you want to become the Elden Lord? Then why the fuck didn't you do that in any of the time before then? What makes you think you could become Elden Lord, considering how fucked up you are, right? Like, none of it makes any sense, right? Like, it's just it's cool, it's interesting. It's like, oh wow, look at this cool fight. Oh gosh, like it's all about this. It's all about the spectacle. And that's pretty much it. It's just the entire game is about the spectacle, and it's cool, and that's all that really matters. And then they just keep everything so super cryptic, so no one really understands what's going on. And so all these lore videos come out, and they're like, okay, well, I found these 5 sentences, and so I'm gonna create a 50-page narrative revolving around based off these 5 sentences. And people are gonna now say the Elden Ring lore is super deep. It's like, no, it's not. Elden Ring lore is ridiculously shallow, but because it has so many gaps, people are just filling in the gaps with their own headcanon, and that's why people like it so much. And that's why people think the narrative is so good. That's why people think the lore is so deep, is because they've made up their own story to explain these things, and you can't explain that away. You can't convince them that their story is wrong, because they made it up. It's their story that they made. So obviously, they made it because they think that's the story that makes the most sense, and you're not going to convince someone that what they thought makes the most sense doesn't make any sense. It's especially difficult because there just isn't enough information about the game to convince them otherwise. Because, like, sure, there might have been a bit of lore or two that they missed, but chances are the bit of lore or two they missed is completely unrelated, because there's 1,000 bits of lore that cover hundreds of years of history. There's only like 5 sentences total for any one event or any one person. So, like, they've probably gotten those 5, and then they're just filling in all the rest, with whatever they think makes sense, right? And you're never going to convince them out of that. And that's why people think it's so good, is because you can't convince them that they're wrong, because there's not enough information. There's not enough information. There's not enough information to support what they think, and there's also not enough information to prove what they think is wrong, right?
Like, they have no proof that what they think is right, but similarly, there's also no proof of what they think is wrong. So you just can't disprove it because of the lack of information. And so they think it's correct, which is just wrong, right? So that's generally why I am scornful of the story. And then I play games for the story, so I'm not going to play a game that has a shitty story. I'm not I'm not gonna play a game that has a shitty story and a boring story. So even if there's a challenge, like I don't mind doing a challenge if the story is compelling enough, where it's like, oh, I really want to know what happens in the story, so I'll do this hard, challenging thing. And even still, there is a limit, right? Like I'm not gonna spend 8 hours to beat Melania. I mean, like, cause yeah, like for like even if Melania was the last boss, and it's like, oh, this is what I need to do to beat the last boss. I was like, 8 hours is not worth it, right? Like I could play an actual game that I enjoy. Um, like why would I want to waste my time like that? So yeah. And yeah, you'll get people be like, oh, well, you just need to get good, blah, blah, blah. And that's like when the whole like Elden Ring DLC came out, people were like, oh, you just need to get good. And there was basically scorning anyone who was like reviewing the DLC as negative because of the difficulty. And people are like, well, you can't think that. It's like, yes, they can. Like everything, everything is an equation, right? The amount of time, like, is it worth it? And everyone's going to think of it differently, right? Like, is the amount of time invested worth it, right? Because like everyone's counter argument, like like everyone's counter argument for like the difficulty of the DLC was bullshit. It was stupid, right? It was like, I mean, there's the classic get good, which obviously is stupid because it's just a meme. But like the people saying, oh well, this is how these DLC always are. You should have expected that. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, Elden Ring is one of the most popular Souls games that FromSoft has ever made, right? So you have to understand that if it's the most popular that's ever been, you're going to get a lot of new players playing it. That makes sense, right? So if there are new players playing it, what do you think that these new players have played other ones? If they're new to Elden Ring, if they're new to Elden Ring, like remember the most popular and any other FromSoft, which means there's new players who've never played a FromSoft game ever, and you're trying to explain, oh well, yeah, their previous DLCs were also hard. It's like great, awesome, but you do realize Elden Ring attracted a lot of people who've never played a single FromSoft game ever in their life. So saying that, oh well, other DLC is also hard, and you should expect this is stupid because they're new. They're completely fucking new. They don't have never played any other FromSoft game, and obviously not any other DLC for a FromSoft game. So obviously they're not going to be aware of that. So like that's a stupid argument. Um, I do dislike the whole people. I also dislike when they say, oh well, it's not hard. You just need to do this or that. Like you need a better build. You need to get the Skadu fragments. You need to get this and that. It's like, okay. While that is a good idea on paper, of yes, if you're having a challenging time in the game, here's a bunch of things you can do to make the game easier. Yes, 100%. Very true. Doing any of these things would definitely help. But it's from their perspective, right? It's from their perspective. But you got to realize the people who are reviewing the game negatively because of the difficulty have probably given up. They've gotten to this point and they've given up. And what you're saying is, hey, I know you didn't like the game, but you're playing it wrong, and you need to put more time into the game. You need to put more hours into this game that you don't like and you're not enjoying so that you can enjoy it later. And it's just like, wow. The level of entitlement that is saying is insane, right? Like, these people are not liking the game, so they stopped, or presumably have stopped, right? And your response to that is, oh, okay, well, you suck. You either A, you suck, the get good is, yeah, your skills suck, you suck. Or B, you're playing it wrong, which of course doesn't feel good to hear anyway. But maybe they are. Like maybe they just are. They're playing willy nilly. They don't have a proper build. They have some shitty things. They didn't build the shit right. Fine, right? But the basic premise behind what they're saying is, okay, you're not having fun, but to have fun, you just need to invest more time. You need to do research. You need to go online and find a build guide and look up where the Skadu fragments are and do all this shit. And it's like, And while that's true, doing these things will help. But like, first of all, I think gamers who do like look up YouTube and look up guides and shit like that, honestly forget that most people don't. Like most people who play games don't look up guides. Like it's a small fraction of the people who play games who actually like look up guides and shit like that, right? Most people just play, willy nilly, don't look up guides at all. Like that's how most people play. So they instantly start with a guide. It's like, yeah, but they wouldn't think of this because there's not a gamer who would do that in the first place. And most people don't, most people aren't, right? Because most people, and so there's some people who just don't find fun in like following a cookie cutter guide. Be like, oh, like I enjoy like exploring and figuring things out for myself, and that's fine. But like obviously, in a game that's incredibly punishing, that can just not be as fun, right? If they only derive fun by figuring things out for themselves, and figuring out what works, but this game just happens to be too punishing to play the game the way they want to play it, and then they stop and say it's just too difficult. Like that's a perfectly valid opinion, and you can't say, well, no, you're playing it wrong. You need to do it this way. You need to play the game in a way you don't particularly find enjoyable or fun, so that you can beat the game and derive enjoyment that way, right? Obviously, it's a dumb argument. And then, of course, the general sentiment is, oh, your opinion that the DLC is too difficult. So essentially, it's saying you can't leave a negative review about this game because of difficulty at all. Like if you're reviewing the game negatively because of its difficulty, that is an invalid opinion, and you're not allowed to leave a review based on that. That's kind of what it feels like, what people are trying to say. Now, I think if you try to say that to them, they might say, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. But like pretty much everyone like online who was explaining why they think, like why they were trying to rationalize why Elden Ring DLC is not, quote unquote, too hard, was basically saying that. They were like, yeah, you just can't. And it's like, no, you can. In fact, Elden Ring and the DLC, its reviews, it's Steam reviews and Metacritic reviews are all not great, right? Like I mean, it's not bad. It's like an 8.0, stuff like that around there. It's around an 8 point. It's around an 80%, right? Both on Steam and Metacritic. So it's like it's not bad, but it's still an 8, right? Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, even though it's so contested by lots of people, is a 9.0. So more people like that game, percentage-wise. Obviously, Elden Ring has a lot more reviews. Sure. I do take Metacritic reviews for Rebirth with a grain of salt, just simply because of how few there are, few user reviews there are. It's like, yeah, sure. Like, like it. I think it and Baldur's Gate 3 are like neck and neck, or I think Baldur's Gate 3 is an 8.9 and Rebirth is a 9.0, but like Baldur's Gate 3 is like 4 times more reviews. So it's like I get that, right? I'm not gonna make any bold statements of saying Rebirth is a better game because obviously people have reviewed it. But generally, it's the kind of thing where it's just like it's a valid review. It's a valid review if you played the game and you don't like the game and difficulty was the main reason you don't like it. It's perfectly valid to leave a review saying yes, I don't like this game. Now, don't leave a one star, like a 1 out of 10 because of that. No, of course not. If you like most of the game and just difficulty was the only thing, sure, rating it an 8 or a 7 would be fine, right? I get people like, no, you can't do that. It's like, because essentially it's a bunch of people who just don't want their game reviewed poorly. They don't, because it's an ego thing again. It's like, oh, you can't review my game. Like my game, I want my game to be popular, but like it's this weird thing where it's like you want your game to be reviewed positively, but you're also incredibly toxic in how you treat people who play the game. In the sense that, yeah, you have to get good. Yeah, you're playing the game wrong. Yeah, you can't. If you're having an issue with difficulty, you need to invest even more time into this game you clearly are not enjoying because you left a negative review on it. Like, it's the same adage of like, oh yes, this MMO gets good 100 hours in, right? Yeah, they're doing the exact same argument. Oh yeah, Elden Ring gets good 100 hours in. Yeah, just put more time into the game. You're not having fun now, but if you put more time into the game, you'll have fun later. It's like, great, awesome. So, no, the game should be fun right from the get-go. And I think that's why Elden Ring was so popular, is because it was fun right from the get-go, right? Because it was easier. And it was, and yeah. Um, so yeah. But yeah, that was a, I have no clue how I got on that tangent. I think I was just talking about Elden Ring and shitting on it in general. Um, yeah, I don't like the game. I don't find value in, like, yeah, I mean, I play games for the story, and the story is shit. So like, I'm just not gonna play the game. I mean, like the story is what would compel me to overcome challenges, not the momentary feeling of joy I get from being a boss. Right? I can get momentary feelings of joy from beating any boss. Right? Obviously, you get more joy for bosses that took you a hard time and took you that were difficult or took you a long time to beat. But if it takes you a long time to beat, that means it's a lot of time where you're not enjoying yourself, where you're feeling angry, upset, annoyed until you finally beat it, and then you feel good again. But like that's still discounting the 8 hours of feeling annoyed and like shit and feeling pissed. It's like 8 hours of feeling pissed. So for one moment of joy, yeah, fuck that. Like that's fucking dumb. I'd rather have a game not give me that high, but be just consistently enjoyable, right? Like I really liked Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. All moments of it. Like the only time I really didn't enjoy, like I had moments where I didn't enjoy it, was when I got cockblocked in Corel twice for 100%ing the region. So the fact that I could only do one portion, I could only do exploration in one portion of it, which is understandable because we hadn't unlocked the rest of the map, so fine. But then we actually get to the rest of the map, and we unlock the desert, but then they still cockblock you and don't let you do the final little portion, so you can't 100% the region yet because you need to get the story to a certain point so you can get the proto relic quest, so that will unlock that like it'll allow you to get to the last part of that map. That pissed me off, and so I didn't. And I think getting cockblocked like that made me not want to do the completionism content of Cosmo Canyon. So I was like, yeah, skip. I'll skip all that and just do the story. So like that was the only like negative thing I kind of really had about it. I was like, yeah, I got it burnt. Like, there was so much to explore and do that it did kind of burn me out because I was just trying to like power through it. And I think that's the problem. I shouldn't have tried to power through it. I should have just taken it a little easier. I was just trying to power through it because I didn't want to get spoiled, but I still also wanted like to explore all the regions. So it's like obviously it's like the counterbalance. It's hard to counterbalance that where it's like, yeah, I want to do everything, but also but also still like keep up and ahead of people streaming it, so I don't get spoiled. Right? Bad mentality to have. I should have just taken it slow and easy. Even still though, like so I skipped Cosmo Canyon's completionism content and did just the story, and then the story took me to Nibelheim, and then I got distracted and just did all the completionism content. Like I explored the region. I 100% in Nibelheim. So it's like I got right back into it because it just is that compelling. I enjoyed pretty much all moments of that game, right? Yeah, I think there were some like some slightly challenging bosses, some slightly challenging fights, but like generally and obviously when you're in these difficult, oh yeah, like I mean, people did complain about the Kate Sith box throwing thing. I actually didn't care about that. Like I didn't even like I did it. And I didn't particularly care about it at all. But there was you doing combat with Kate Sith, especially against the one like scale enemy. And it was like fighting one is fine, where it's like, oh okay, you can only do magic, you can only do physical. That fighting one was fine, but like the fight where you had to fight two of them at the same time, holy fuck, that was annoying. When you only have Kate Sith to fight, and I don't think he was built well for that. I don't think I gave him the right material. I forget. I just remember that fight sucking dick. Like that was the only negative thing I had. Actually, I guess I remember finding Vincent really sucked too. Like got really frustrated fighting him too. But I was still able to beat it. I was glad about beating it. But yeah, like were there moments of frustration? Sure, right? Like some moments in combat were really kind of rough. But generally, I just enjoy the entire thing. Like just because it's frustrating doesn't mean I didn't like the game. And I mean, maybe Elden Ring people will argue that too. Oh, it was frustrating to fight Melania, but you didn't dislike fighting Melania. It's like, yeah, it's about. I don't know. I'm not really about the. Like, I'm more about end results. For me, the end result is like revealing the story. So I'm not really about the journey. Like fighting Melania for 8 hours would not be enjoyable for me at all. Because I just want to beat the thing. The thing is to beat it, right? Uh, but it's not just about beating it. It's like I'm beating Vincent so I can continue the story because I want to know what the story of Rebirth is going to be, right? So yeah, I just enjoy the game more. I enjoy all aspects of the game. Where it's just again Elden Ring, I just wouldn't have that. It's like most of the game is boring. Like it's just and people are like, oh, it's so open world. It's so like what I find crazy is that like people say, oh, Elden Ring's open world, which it is, and they like the exploration. Cool, great, and that's fine, right? Like, and I do like it's really cool that like they do put like little random bits and pieces of like unlockable like the smithing stones in random locations, even in places where you're like, how the fuck did you think someone would ever go to this location? Very good level design. Um, but it is crazy that you get people saying, "Oh, that's amazing," but then also complain about Ubisoft, right? Where like the Assassin's Creed, where it's like, "Oh, well, I have all these towers," and you'll be like, "Yeah," you'll criticize it because, "Oh, you get to these towers, and then the tower will show you all the points on the map that are points of interest and stuff like that." And I guess they don't like when the points of interest are pointed out for them, and they rather just explore. But it's like it's the same basic premise where it's like, great, they have this big open world and they have a bunch of things to do. Elden Ring is the exact same way. The only difference is that Ubisoft will, well, if you go to one of the towers, will reveal the points on the map so you know where to go for them, and Elden Ring doesn't. But they'll be, oh my god, they're like, Elden Ring is good, it's Ubisoft bad. Like, yeah, I think it's a lot of people just hating on Ubisoft regardless because they just don't like maybe the Assassin's Creed type games like that go on the same formula. But it's like Elden Ring is the exact same formula too. Like it's again, Souls like are the same formula. Like, Souls like games are identical to each other. Like Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, Elden Ring. They're all the same. Combat is all practically identical. They just have like one or two new things each time, and that's it, right? Like it's at its core, it's the same game. They just change the setting and the enemies, and that's it. And that's like, oh, that's exactly like the Assassin's Creed games. At its core, it's basically the same game. They just change the enemy and setting. And obviously, this is a gross oversimplification, but like it is crazy that people. It's crazy that people just don't understand how hypocritical they are, right? Because they'll say these negative things about, oh yeah, Assassin's Creed or this same cookie cutter plot type thing. Where it's like, yeah, but so are Souls. Like it's the same cookie cutter shit. It's the same game. They just gave it a new coat of paint. So why is Ubisoft bad? Well, because they're it's one of those things where they because they don't like that game or that company, they're like, oh, I don't like this company. Now I'm going to have to think of a reason why I don't like it. Oh, okay, it's because of this. Not realizing that that same excuse can apply to games they do like. Like I had an argument with people discussing like filler quests, and they're like, "Oh, I don't like filler quests." Like this filler, like the filler in like there were people who said the filler in Final Fantasy 16, and we're like, "Okay, sure." There are some quests where it's like, "Yeah, sure." Like it's not like super interesting. Like helping Mid help construct the engines for the ship that we're eventually going to need. You know, sure, helping her do that is not like the most exciting thing in the world, and so you can consider that filler if you're thinking it's a quest that is needed for the main story and is boring. Sure. um, but like the problem is you're like, oh, I don't like filler in games. It's like, well, all games have filler. Every game has filler quests, right? Like even Baldur's Gate 3. In fact, I would argue Baldur's Gate 3 has the most filler quests because if the definition of a filler quest is something that's required by the main story, but is boring or uninteresting or could be cut from the game without affecting it too greatly, is a filler quest. And I would argue, well, then Final Fantasy 16 doesn't even qualify because those quests are actually required. You do need to create those engines because you do need that ship because that ship is the only way to get to Waloed. So if you didn't have those quests and the ship wasn't created, now obviously yes, you could narratively cut it out and be like, yeah, Mid had already designed the ship, and you didn't need to help her with it. Like she was already almost done, and then she just reveals it at the end, like when we need it. I mean, a little extra Deus Ex Machina. Oh yeah, by the way, I just happen to have a ship that is as fast as the country that revolves around their navy. I just happen to do that. Yeah, obviously a little weird, right? So I didn't think setting it up, letting us know how difficult it is to create engines like this and do all this shit, that I think does make it more impressive of what she did. Whatever, right? Um, but let's just say yes. If that's your definition of filler quest, I'd argue Baldur's Gate 3 has the most filler quest of anything because Baldur's Gate 3 has like 17,000 endings, which means if there's 17,000 endings, that means there's 17,000 main stories, right? That means every quest is a main story quest because even if you no, these are side quests. It's like, well, no, it's not a side quest because if you making this decision in this side quest leads to a different ending, it's now obviously a main story quest for that ending, right? If that ending needs you to say this thing or do this thing in this side quest, then that side quest is a main story quest for that specific ending. Sure, other endings don't need it, and so it's a side quest for those endings. But if there is an ending that requires it, then it is now a main story quest. And so I would say that any quest in Baldur's Gate 3 that is a requirement for any one of the endings now is a main story quest. And if any of them are uninteresting or boring, then that would fall under the filler category, right? So it's one of these things, but I wouldn't say Baldur's Gate 3 is bad because it has filler quests. Like, no, Baldur's Gate 3 is great because of all the variety and all the side quests and all the interesting things you can do. I'm not expecting every single side quest to be like riveting and amazing. Now, sure, maybe most of them are, and that's great, but like there has to be some. And then regardless, even if like there's just going to be people who just don't like a particular side quest, regardless, right? It's like, oh, I did this, I didn't care for it, I don't like the character, I don't like this or that, whatever, right? You're not going to appeal to everyone every single side quest, obviously. So like people who are complaining about filler are really just saying, no, I don't like this game. I don't have a really good reason for it, so I'm just going to make up bullshit, right? I don't like, or I found this part boring, therefore the game is bad because of it. Like, what? You found this, like, and that's the crazy thing too, especially with like the mid helping mid with her ship in Final Fantasy 16. Like, doing all those quests take maybe 30 minutes, right? It's crazy that you get people who spend like 30 minutes doing this, right? But then don't mind spending hours doing some other bullshit in another game. Like that is equally boring, right? Like it's just like I had people who was like, oh man, like this 30-minute doing this quest for 30 minutes, like, oh, that's so fucking boring. Oh, this game's so much filler. But then you see them like, and again, I'll just bring up Baldur's Gate 3 again because it has a good example. So they complain about 30 minutes of doing this quest they didn't particularly find interesting. Okay, sure. And they call that filler and the game's bad because of it. But then you see them spend far more time just doing inventory management in Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3. Inventory management, which is everyone understands this is boring as fuck, right? You're just sorting your items, throwing away some things, keeping some things, buying inventory management, like sorting the things you've just randomly collected as you're going through the game. Inventory management, the most boring thing you could possibly do in any game, and you spend easily 2 to 3 times more doing that in just one act of the game than all the like. Basically, and I would even say like they spent more time in inventory management in just Act 1 than the entirety of the filler content of Final Fantasy 16. Yet Final Fantasy 16 is the game that is boring because of filler, and Baldur's Gate 3 is not. Now I do get it. Inventory management is purely optional and all that stuff, but like it's optional, but not really. You do definitely have to manage your inventory, and maybe after you've played the game a few times, you'll only be picking up the necessary things, but there still will be managing of like moving items, moving equipment, all that shit. That will have to happen, right? Regardless of how seasoned you are with the game. So it's just like, it's crazy. You just get these people who are just like, bring up all this random bullshit. And it's just like, yeah, it's them having an opinion and then working backwards to try to rationalize why they have it, right? Where it's like, oh, I don't like this game. Okay, well, it's because it has filler. Where it's like, well, how do you define filler? Oh, okay, you define filler like this? Okay, well then, you do realize these other games you enjoy also fulfill that criteria, right? Like, so clearly you're not taking a principled stand that games with filler are bad, and here's how I define filler, and if you're a game that satisfies these conditions for filler, you're a bad game. Like, no, you'll never find people who actually have a principled stance for this shit. They'll say, no, this is bad. This is why, and now I've come up with a reason why it's bad. Oh, Ubisoft games are just such a cookie cutter thing where all of them are the same and they're not really innovating. It's like, yeah, well, so is FromSoft. Like, how have they innovated? And people were like, oh, well, Elden Ring innovated by making it open world. It's like, that's not an innovation, first of all, because lots of other games are open world. And second of all, there were maps in other Dark Souls games that were that big. Like, not like obviously as big as the world map, but like there were maps in Dark Souls that were huge. That were big, wide open spaces. So it's just like, it's not really that. It's like, oh, great. So you just made your maps bigger. That's the innovation. You made your maps bigger. Now, you could say, oh, well, you've added jumping and torrent and stuff like that. And that's, kind of part and parcel with the open world exploration aspect of it. But like, I wouldn't even say like that's a huge innovation, but sure, like it is different. And it definitely is something, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think I doubt you'll ever get a Dark Souls game or FromSoft Souls-like FromSoft game that will not have jumping anymore, because I don't think people will accept not being able to jump anymore. But now that Elden Ring has done it, but like, it's just like it's the same. Its core game is essentially the same. Like, because you'd be like, oh, but it's open world exploration. It's like, great, awesome. How does that change how you play the game? It doesn't. The open world exploration doesn't change how you play the game. You're still going to go through catacombs. You're still going to go through levels. You're still going to fight bosses. Like, the combat hasn't changed. The moment-to-moment gameplay hasn't changed. Just the fact that you find it in an open field versus finding it in a hallway or at the end in an empty room at the end of a corridor. Like, oh, does that really matter? Does where you find the boss that you have to fight matter? No, it really doesn't, right? Like, is it changing how you have to get smithing stones? Like, sure, you have to go explore for smithing stones, but like that's what you did in all the Dark Souls games. You have to go down various paths to get all the various items that you need to level up your shit. Like, it doesn't change the fact that it's a big open space that like, no, you're still doing still going through the exact same motions you did in all the other Dark Souls games. It just, now the skybox is bigger, and now it's a wider space. Like, it's really, that's the only difference that has done. It's still definitely a good improvement. Don't get me wrong on that. Like, it's good that they did this. It's really it's great, but like, it's not innovative. It hasn't changed how you play their games. I guess, well, except jumping. I guess jumping has now you have jumping attacks, so there is that. But otherwise, pretty much the same. So it's just like, yeah. So it's like, so obviously people do these things and they just criticize these things, and they're not realizing, oh, you do realize these criticisms you have, like, can also apply to your games, right? You're just not applying to those games because you're not critically thinking. You're just like, you're thinking, oh, I don't like this game. Let me think of why. And it's like, and I'd be fine if you want to say Assassin's Creed is pretty much the same. If you want to say you're just fatigued because you've just played the Assassin's Creed formula just too many times, that's fine to say you're fatigued with the Assassin's Creed formula. But don't try to make a carte blanche statement of saying, oh, no, it's just the same game over and over again. It's like, well, no, it's not. You being fatigued with that formula is one thing. It being the same game is something you could apply to other franchises. But anyway, done with my rant. God damn it. This is a long, long rant. It's only got, Jesus Christ, it's seriously 2-hour rant. Fuck. But yeah, I've been thinking this for a while. Like, I've always thought this. It's always been kind of in the back of my mind. It's always been kind of annoying for me to see this discourse bandied about by people who just like aren't thinking logically and aren't thinking critically. Like, you want to dislike a game, that's fine. Like, I'm not saying you have to like Assassin's Creed. I'm not saying you have to like this game or that game or whatever, right? I'm not saying you have to like these games. But, like, if you want to dislike the game, just say, I don't like the game. Or, I don't like certain aspects of the game. The problem is they just try to make these, like, they try to make it bigger than what it is, right? They try to say, rather than saying, oh, I don't like this game, I just don't like the feel of combat for this game. It's like saying, it's like someone saying, oh, I don't like the feel of Wuthering Waves combat. I don't like, then just making the carte blanche statement of saying, well, I don't like action combat games. And it's like, well, what about these other action combat games you like? It's like, shit. I was trying to make this grand statement, and not realizing the fact that like this is not a principled stance. This is me just exaggerating to try to prove a point or to make it sound bigger than what it is. You know, stuff like that. But anyway, I need to go to the bathroom, so I'll go to the bathroom and I'll be right back. And I'll actually complete this quest this time, and I'll stop fucking ranting. But, uh, but yeah. So anyone watching this in the VOD, feel free to leave scathing comments about how I'm wrong, if you feel like. Um, or maybe defending Elden Ring. Perhaps you want to say that maybe the lore isn't as shallow as I said it is, and maybe you could provide me a sentence count for a description of every single character to disprove it. Maybe you can prove that someone beyond Radagon or Marika have more than 20 sentences describing them. Ooh, 20 sentences. Oh, 20 sentences to describe one of the key pivotal characters of a story? Ooh, that would be unheard of in a FromSoft game. Anyway, I'll be right back. Obviously, I'm just being a little antagonistic for that. I don't particularly care. I'm never going to play the game. It's not worth it for me. Um, but I have seen people play it. I have heard lore things about it. I think I've seen a lore video about it too, or two, and it's just like, so I do understand the basic premise of, I understand the basic premise of the story in the game, and it's just it's not impressive whatsoever. Okay, I'm back. Now, it's actually time to do this quest. What the fuck? How was she able to do that? I don't remember her ever having that ability. Is that Sino? Oh, Dory. The penmanship in drawing a circle, I found that a little unbelievable. Oh, that was it. Shit. I didn't see the end. I had like half the long-term encounter points as before. I've also I redeemed them, so why didn't it count? Or do I have to actually redeem the reward at the end from the Adventurers Guild? I still have 119. What the hell? I thought I don't know how this works. Oh, I have no money. I wanted to buy more. I wanted to get some talent shit. Maybe I should get talent shit anyway. She's not maxed. I have no money. I also need to kill a bunch of those thingies too. I need more sea creature parts. Also for her to max her out. Oh wait. Oh, I see. There's one that. So I could run. I could run the talent domain for her. I guess I'm not. I guess I need money. Regardless, I just need. I'm too poor.
きの雷。
打ち続けて。
邪悪を狩り撃つ。と
これって3番手よっ。せそれ。
See, I thought this book would be related to the book that we went into. Like this is what I was expecting. Like the book that we're looking for is the one that all of us used to get sucked into the game. But like no, it's a completely unrelated, separate book. Like oh, okay, like that's actually a little surprising. I got 242. Is 242 the max? It has to be the max because I'm surprised they made it an odd, like not an odd number. It's an even number, obviously, but like not like 250 or something, or just 240, or like a multiple of 10. Uh, Whatever though. Yeah, I was expecting that book to be related to, because obviously we went into a book. I was expecting it to be related to that. So yeah. Anyway, that's what I was just going to do today. I ended up spending a lot extra time on a rant, but I'm going to go ahead and call it a day for this, and then I will be. I think I'll just be starting Honkai Star Rail to do my weekly Divergent Universe run. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.